Hey everybody, welcome back to Checkerboard Chat, the official sports podcast of the Daily Beacon. I'm Tyler Wombles, and that's DeMichael Cole. We're back here talking to you more about Tennessee athletics. So DeMichael, just heading into this a little bit, obviously a pretty big week for Tennessee football. Spring practice start and the first spring practice of the Jeremy Pruitt era. It's really our first chance to see not only, see Jeremy Pruitt in orange really stalking around those sidelines, but also just seeing, what the team may look like. Obviously, they are missing some key players. You're not going to get to see a whole lot offensive, defensively until the orange and white game. But DeMichael was there for us on Tuesday. So, DeMichael, just break it down for us a little bit. What were some key takeaways? What did you see from Jeremy Pruitt's first spring practice at Tennessee?
Well, it was a lot different from the fall. You can definitely see that Pruitt is putting his own stamp on the way he wants to practice here. I mean, something simple as they flip the field. Like, on the practice field, on the Haslam field, they have two fields, and they started on the opposite field. So, I mean, as soon as you walk into practice, you're saying, well, it's already different.
Yeah.
And
might have done that on purpose. I don't know.
Right, yeah. I'm pretty sure he did, just to switch it up, putting his own stamp on the way he wants to run practice. And just picking up off of that, I mean, the main takeaway from me was that it was so fast. It was like watching a 2-minute offense or a no-huddle offense just go at it the entire time, that the media was there. And what Pruitt said about that was he wants constant movement. He was basically saying that he doesn't want any players walking on first string starters. He doesn't want anyone just standing around because he wants everyone to get the same amount of reps. He wants everyone to get better. So when you're at practice, your eyes are just flying around the field because 1 second you have these players moving on this side of the field, then you have players on this side of the field moving. It's just so much movement, and you can tell they're trying to get so much done. And he emphasized they only have 15 practice, and they want to maximize these practices, and he consistently emphasizes that to them. So I like that method a little bit. From what we saw from Bush Jones, when we were allowed to be in practice, I think it was a little bit slower and a little bit more focused on I guess the position groups just focusing on whatever they wanted to focus on for like that full time period. While Pruitt was just, all right, let's go, and it was fast. So, I mean, maybe that's something, he got from Saban because he said, this is something that they've done at pretty much all his previous stops, and obviously it's had success. So that was the main difference, but of course, there are other things that'll weigh out in the spring too, as far as like injuries and players who will be available and, things like that.
For sure, and I think that would probably, for a lot of Tennessee fans, probably be a welcome sight to see that sort of fast-paced, high-octane spring practice, because that was really a big narrative that was talked about with Pruitt coming in. There were some people that said Butch was really, gimmicky, or he had these slogans, and Pruitt has been sort of the opposite, or at least so far from what we've seen.
Right. More
hard-nosed, more, this is the way we're going to do it. You can get out of the way.
Good old-fashioned country boy. Man.
Yeah, sure, and I don't think anyone expected any less from this guy, coming from the Nick Saban school of coaching, coming from, and just even listening to his press conferences, hearing the way this guy talks.
Yeah.
I think he's honest, and he appears to have been honest with the way he demanded for practice. DeMichael, just looking a little bit more at the spring practice, obviously, there was some big news. Obviously, Quay Paku is not on Tennessee's roster. Juwan Jennings is listed on the roster, but he was not at practice, correct? Right. So just looking at those two players and then maybe some other things that you've noticed, how much do you think that will affect Tennessee going into this spring practice and then the orange and white game and possibly even later on in the season?
Well, one thing that Pruitt said that stood out was he said that they have numbers, which is, something a lot of people may not have known. Tennessee has numbers, with players, but they're short at some positions.
Right.
So basically what he's saying is, at some positions they have 1,000 guys, and then at some positions they're short. And obviously, offensive line is the main one.
Yes.
They didn't have a lot of offensive line guys last year because of all of the injuries, and now you get hit with an injury already from your best, offensive lineman in Trey Smith. So it's just how will he? Because he uses this. Well, from what we've seen, in the first practice, he uses this fast-paced practice style that you would think, you would need the numbers at each position group to, make this work because, coming from like Florida State and Alabama, depth's not a problem.
Exactly.
So it's like, how will that, continue to work out and how is he going to put his staple on this program? I mean, we don't know anything about, Quay and what happened there.
Right.
But, is it Pruitt making a statement saying, hey, I'm the coach here now. This is the way we're going to do things. And I'm not sure. But, with Jawan Jennings, everyone's trying to, say, Pruitt, aren't you happy he's back, blah, blah, blah. And he's saying, well, wait a minute, because he still has some things to take care of.
And that's part of that hard-nosed mentality,
sure. Exactly. So he's emphasizing, that he's not going to just, let players just get away with things. And that's, that's good for the program, too. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, the practice, the way that they've practiced so far, I like what I've seen.
Sure.
And another big takeaway is obviously Pruitt's a defensive guy.
Yeah.
And at practice, you see him pretty much the entire time with the defense.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, so he's, obviously, it makes sense because he's so much more familiar with the defensive coaches than the offensive coaches that he's hired on. So you factor that in as well because, that communication factor may come a little more seamlessly with the defensive guys. But with offensive guys, it's like he's giving them more, leeway and freedom to say, hey, this is what I want, but you do it. Just you have the freedom to do it in whatever way you want. So that's what I took away from it. And it'll be interesting to see how that plays out going all the way into the spring game.
For sure, and I thought it was really interesting that you mentioned, Pruitt mainly working with the defense. Obviously, we know he has said in press conferences past that he was, going to try to be balanced, focus on everything.
Yeah.
Obviously, defense is what, his bread and butter. It's what he's made a living in so far. So I think it is interesting to see him, mainly work at that position group, that spot.
And he did say, that's mainly because he's more familiar with the defensive guys and he has that defensive background. So I think it's more, you see Saban do it too with his defensive background, how he gave Lane Kiffin and, all his offensive coordinators, of recent, he gives them the leeway.
Sure. Right, exactly.
We're not going to go back to the Greg McElwains and those. But
and I don't know if that's a word that's used much when talking about Saban leeway. So,
exactly.
Obviously, but But yeah, I think, and I don't know, maybe Pruitt is looking to maybe he'll spend the next practice all with the offense.
Right.
I don't know, maybe he wants to do it that type of way, and it's interesting to Michael, whenever he was with the defense, was he more, I say aggressively coaching? Was he more, getting his players' face, sort of halfway doing, the job of the other position coaches, or was he more letting them coach, sort of taking a back seat? Just what did you see from him in that area?
Yeah, what I saw mainly was him. He was taking more of a back seat, just like observant, bro, just spying on everything. So, but it, like I said, it was so fast.
Yeah, exactly.
All of the, you had linebackers probably 120 yards away from defensive backs.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
oh, yeah.
It was. Yeah, they were on the completely other field.
Yeah, linebackers. That's a change for sure.
Defensive linemen were beside the linebackers, and then defensive backs were kind of far away. So obviously a lot of movement, and like I said, it was very fast paced. So, but even with the assistant coaches, there's some fiery guys that they have on this staff, and Butch Jones had some guys like that too that were but Pruitt, you can tell. That he made a focus on getting some passionate coaches that can, really teach things that can take Tennessee to the next level.
And I think, that is intriguing because, like we said before, obviously Pruitt has really already sort of established himself as a guy who's, more about the on-the-field stuff. We're not going to worry about, the slogans, this other type of stuff. We're going to go in there, we're going to coach. This is the way it's going to be.
Yeah.
And I think, you see the fast-paced, and that's a part of it, but also, you said that with the fiery coaches. They might be putting more emphasis on, we're just going to coach. That's what we're going to do. It's on-the-field stuff. It's not going to be, this other stuff. Obviously, there's not a whole lot you can take from that first spring practice, and we'll see more as it develops.
Right.
But I think that is really intriguing and really interesting to think of him doing that way, for sure. So, DeMichael, just you did get to talk to Pruitt on Tuesday. Was there anything else that he said that sort of jumped out to you in particular, or was it too early to tell, really, and sort of being guarded a little bit?
You could tell. The main thing to me, you could tell he's still learning. His team. There are probably over 90 guys on this roster.
You always have a big
there.
roster at Tennessee.
The roster's huge.
Yeah.
It's probably not 90 guys right now because you still have the fall enrollees. Summer enrollees that have to come in, but. It's so many guys that he has to get familiar with, and I kind of mentioned that, in my article, that he has to, familiarize himself with so many players because, reporters and people are already asking him, what do you think about this certain player making a position change? So that requires him watching that player from every year that they've been here till now, and, it's a lot of work. So you can tell, they asked him about Bumpus, he played some tight end and he's moved around.
Yeah, sure.
And they're giving him a look at running back.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So maybe it's sort of like a F-back, fullback type role.
Yeah.
But they're giving him a look at running back. So he mentioned that, and he sort of made a joke too. When one of the guys in the media mentioned the player, he was like. You noticed something before I did, kind of a thing, but obviously he was joking around. But that just shows, he has to, completely familiarize himself with this, and that's a lot. He's only had a job 2 months. Maybe?
It's the first spring practice too. So
right, the very first practice that he gets to evaluate his own eyes, not on film, his drills, etc. So
right, and so obviously now we're going to stop talking about the beginning. For a team. We're going to start talking about the end for two teams. Okay. Obviously, the Tennessee basketball teams, both of them saw their seasons ended in the second round of the NCAA tournament. Obviously, the men's team was defeated by Loyola Chicago on the last-second shot to bump them out, and the Lady Vols were defeated by Oregon State. It wasn't a last-second shot. That was more about around a 7 to 10 point deficit there. So just first of all, to Michael, talking about that men's loss, there was a lot written and a lot talked about that locker room after the game, how distraught the players were, how defeated they were. Just what do you think the mindset of the team will be leaving this season? Do you think they'll take away more of the positives, or could it be more of just that one end of the season when they thought, people were talking about this team go to the Elite Eight. Yeah. So do you think that they'll hinge more on that, or will they focus on sort of the positives that they had this season?
Well, obviously, right after the loss, you're thinking about what you wanted to do, what your long-term goals were, and everyone knew this team wanted to make a Final Four, and they've said it since summer practices. That was their goal. So right now they're down, but I think long-term maybe it could be turn out to be a good thing for them. Because, obviously, you don't want that to happen, losing on a last-second shot like that. But you look at the team, pretty much everyone except James Daniel is expected to return. So if this was more of a senior-laden team with 4 or 5 seniors and you're thinking, oh, man, you won't ever see this bunch play together again, that makes it a harder pill to swallow. Sure. But now that Grant Williams is coming back, Admiral Schofield is coming back, and pretty much your freshmen from last year will have a chance to take that second-year jump, similar to, a guy like Grant Williams and Jordan Bone did and Jordan Bowden. So you look at that, and plus, the recruits that they'll bring in, and you combine all that together, and you say, this team has a realistic chance of improving even more next season. And what can make that even more realistic is the fact that they have a very, very, very big chip on their shoulder from the way that this season ended. And you better believe that's going to be heavy on their hearts all the way into next season. And, it's going to be something emphasized probably in workouts. And because now that they have the success, if they're having a success next year, no one will be as surprised. Right. So they won't be getting the same questions like, did you expect this and stuff like that. Now it'll be, okay, what has to change to get you past that second round? And they're going to keep hearing that. Yep. It's going to stay on their minds, and it's going to make them work harder. And, they already have a pretty, hard-working team.
Yeah.
But
I think Rick Barnes makes sure of that.
Yeah, exactly, because of that man that's the coach. I mean, he always says how hard work is a talent. But it's definitely something they can benefit from. But, yeah.
Right. And then, just with this team, I don't know if, obviously you have to see more practice for next year and all that, but do you think that they could realistically make a push to as far as they went in the NCAA tournament this year? Obviously, the second round isn't very far, but do you think maybe next year they have more of a chance to make the Elite Eight, or do you think it could take more time for Rick Barnes to get his program to that level?
It's a tricky question because the obvious quick answer is, of course, they were a 3 seed this year. Everyone comes back. They can improve. But you look at the SEC as a whole, this was probably the year because Vanderbilt has an elite recruiting class.
Yeah.
LSU has an elite recruiting class. Kentucky's going to have a pretty good recruiting class.
And you can't expect them to stay down with it being Kentucky.
Oh, no doubt. And you look at those 3 programs putting together top-tier recruiting classes, and, of course, you're going to have other programs in there. Like South Carolina is a program that, I don't expect them to stay down the way Frank Martin, coaches his teams with that blue-collar mindset. And, there are going to be other teams that'll be threats. And I think the fact that LSU and Vanderbilt look like they're on the incline, combined with Kentucky just always being around, it'll be tough, to, repeat as SEC regular season champions. It'll be real tough, and that affects seeding and all of those things. So maybe they could have a 3 seed next year, and probably even it'd be about maybe even a worse season, perhaps. But they could still be a 3 seed just because the SEC will probably be a little bit better at the top. Yeah. I would say. So obviously Tennessee was a 3, Auburn was a 4, Kentucky was a 5, but no 1 or 2 seeds from the SEC, and I think that'll change next year.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, now we're going to talk a little bit about, the other basketball team on campus, the Lady Vols. Obviously, like we said, they also got ousted in the second round of the tournament. And I think it's a little bit different situation there, but there are some similarities.
Right.
This team is losing 2 of, the most standout players in recent history, Jamie Nard and Mercedes Russell. Obviously, Mercedes Russell surpassed the mark of 1,500 points, 1,000 rebounds. She ranks high in Tennessee history in those categories in Lady Vols program. Jamie Nard was known for her leadership. She was a player that I think really paced the team on the court. She was very, she struggled with consistency later in the season, but she was a leader on the court. She was very level-headed. And so I think those are 2 things that'll be really tough to replace. And those were your 2 leading scorers.
Right, yeah.
And I'm pretty sure, I know Mercedes Russell was the leading rebounder. I think Nard was second. I'm not totally sure on that. It might have been Renee Davis, but she was definitely up there. So you're talking about the men's team, only losing James Daniel, who wasn't a starter. And this women's team, both of them were starters. I think that would be definitely very hard to replace, especially because a lot of your players coming back are freshmen or are younger players. But at the same time, I don't think that's an awful situation to be in because you have Avina Westbrook, who started the whole season at point guard. You have Anastasia Hayes, who subbed in for her a lot, provided really a change of pace off the bench.
3 freshmen that received SEC honors.
Yeah, so exactly.
That's a good start, huh?
I think Renee Davis is a player that, Will Backus, the Lady Vols beat writer, and I have talked about this. I think she's a player that really could be the next coming of Jamie Nard, maybe even better. They both play at that forward position. She's a dynamic scorer. Obviously, we saw in the SEC tournament her with that game-winning shot to win that first game. And she'd stood out a lot of the season. And Cassiana Kushkitawa, she's a player who didn't play a whole lot of minutes this season, but she's a player that I think will definitely get more minutes next year with Russell moving on. And there's definitely a lot of potential and a lot of optimism for this team. Obviously, fans right now, DeMichael, they are frustrated. It was another season where, they fell short. Actually, it was the second season in a row they've lost in the round of 32, which is a program record now. First time in program history that's happened. It was the first tournament loss on their home court. So fans are frustrated, and those frustrations are understandable. You can see where they are coming from that. I do think there is optimism for this team moving forward on the roster. So did you have anything to add to that? Or
just same thing pretty much with the men's squad. We saw it with Grant Williams from his freshman year to his sophomore year, Jordan Bone from his freshman year to his sophomore year, Jordan Bowden. And that's a big thing in college basketball, NBA, college football, whatever. That jump from your first year to your second year is usually your biggest jump, because your freshman year you're learning and everything's so fast paced, and usually for most freshmen it starts to slow down as the season goes on, and then you have a whole summer after that to build your confidence up, and that's when your talents start to take over. And obviously those three players that you mentioned are extremely talented, because they were the number one recruiting class coming in. And that's going to be a big thing. If those three players can take that jump, and play up to their their rankings coming in,
exactly.
Then like you said, there should be a little bit more optimism going forward for the Lady Vols.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the main storyline for next season for them. People don't know what's going to happen. You hope that Avina Westbrook can take that next step. Anastasia Hayes, both of those players had a lot of great moments. They had a lot of moments that they would need to improve on. And obviously, Holly Warlick is on the final year of her contract. She'll be coming up on that. So I think just a lot of question marks coming up on the next season, and we'll obviously see where that goes. And finally, before we close it out, just want to touch a little bit on Tennessee softball. Obviously, Tennessee softball is ranked now number 2 in the nation. I think they just have one loss.
30-1.
Yeah, 30-1. Just Ralph and Karen Weekly heading that program. They have been for a long time. I think that, DeMichael, it's safe to say this team could likely be a contender for the World Series in softball.
Yeah.
The SEC, obviously we talked about it a couple episodes ago. The SEC is super deep in softball right now. But this Lady Vols softball team doesn't seem to be fazed by anything. What are your takeaways from them right now?
Well, obviously they'll have to get a little bit more into that meat of that SEC slate. But, they had a real good performance in Hawaii over the break. When they went to Hawaii, they had a really good performance. So, they look real good. But like we just mentioned, I think I saw the other day, not just with the poll rankings, there are 13 teams in the SEC ranked in the top 35 in RPI.
Yeah.
13. There are 14 teams in the SEC.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's
14
I'd
teams.
hate to be that one team. That's not right.
Oh, it's Vanderbilt.
Well, sure, yeah.
So 13 teams in the top 35. Obviously they're gonna run into who knows which one of those teams may knock them off a few times. One loss is unrealistic in the SEC. So they're having a very good year though, but you'll learn a little bit more about this team when they hit this hard SEC slate, when they take on teams like Texas A&M, LSU, Florida. So it'll be fun to watch. Though I tell you, they look really good.
Yeah,
they're starting to develop, especially when getting Brooke Vines back. That's been big for them too. So
and I think we already established in an earlier episode that this is a softball school.
Yes.
So
when was the last time? Who was the last number 2 team here besides this softball team?
I couldn't tell you. I really don't know. It's been a while.
This is a softball school.
Sure. Yep. But thanks for watching, guys. That's going to wrap it up for us today. Be sure to check out the Daily Beacon's website for more content. Obviously, follow us both on Twitter and follow Daily Beacon Sports account for more content. But once again, thanks for watching. This is Tyler Wombles. That's DeMichael Cole. And we'll see you back on the next episode.